Hi, everybody. We have some repeat messages and then that's okay. We'll get started here. Hi, my name is Jeannie Hertzler. I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Alejandri, and we are welcoming you to this session with Dr. Kim St. Martin for coaching secondary MTSS reading, coaching people through change. So I'm really excited about this session. Remember that everything about the conference can be found on events.patent.net. And if you haven't found it by this session, I'm really sorry for you. Make sure, thank you for wearing your name tag all day long. That was your registration proof, and I hope you enjoyed your lunch with that. The sessions, remember, will be recorded, and we will put those up on our Literacy Resource Hub and on our YouTube channel in the near future. If you haven't been tweeting and you're a tweeter, please do so about this event. We would hope to spread the news of all the great things you're learning today. And now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Kim St. Martin.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to see you. Okay. So how many of you attended the session I did earlier? Okay, so quite a few. How many of you were just in the previous session okay, so some of you. All right, how many of you are tweeters? Or is it Xers or tweeters? No, okay. So so I am not, I'm 47. I'm in the bifocal stage. I'm getting older. I totally am. My eyes are getting bad. And okay, full disclosure, someone hacked into my Twitter. Is it a Twitter handle? And I'm permanently suspended from Twitter because someone did something nefarious on it. And they won't unlock it. I did nothing. And I'm like, and they're like, no, we will not let you back on. Now, they didn't talk to me and say that. They wrote me. I said, well, good. Can you just delete the account? Because I don't ever go on. They said, no, we will just permanently suspend your account. So I have a Twitter handle or an X handle, and I can never get back on it again. I feel so embarrassed by this, but I'm embarrassed to even search to see what someone did with my account. God only knows. So I can't tweet even if I wanted to, and I'm apparently suspended now from it forever. So I have no idea what happened. But anyway, so my name is Kim St. Martin, and for those of you who don't know me, I actually born and raised in upstate New York. I still have some of my New York accent. I say elementary, I say sneakers, I say foggy. I'm ridiculed by Dr. Archer. She's constantly trying to get me to say elementary, not elementary, and I'm doubling and tripling down. I'm not going to do it. I'm holding to my New York State roots. But my first year of teaching was in Philadelphia. That's where I taught for the City School District of Philadelphia, Potter Thomas Elementary. That's where I began my teaching career. And I'm now in Michigan. So I'm a Michigander, huge U of M fan. Great year for the Wolverines. And we'll see what next year brings. But anyways, I'm the director for Michigan's MTSS Technical Assistance Center. I have elementary, middle, high experience. My passion, though, is literacy, and we very much focus on an integrated behavior and reading MTSS framework. So this morning was focused on Tier 1 reading strategies that are used in core subject area classrooms. And now we're talking about coaching. And so coaching is really very, very popular. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about coaching, but I'm really going to hone in on coaching people through change. So is it possible that not everyone that you coach wants to implement what you're coaching them to do? Is that possible? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, I'm glad it's not just Michigan. I'm glad that people are not as ready to change in Pennsylvania as Michigan. Okay. If you do not have the materials, here's the QR code. People who have a handout, you have the QR code in front of you. I did also include a link for the materials from this morning's session because I am going to talk a little bit about what's being coached And so the what's being coached, I pulled in a few slides from the session from this morning. So the next slide is going to really hone in on this morning's materials, which is the QR code that's going to click and show you next. So that I know some people have their phones out, so I don't want to click too fast. You good? No, she'll make sure you were okay. Okay. All right. So if you want the materials from this morning, here's the QR code from this morning. Okay. So how many of you are currently in a coaching role? Coaches? Okay. How many of you are an administrator? Okay. Wait, loud and proud, hands up high. Okay. Expect excellence from the administrators. All right. Okay. So here's my outcome. So today is going to be a session where I'm going to talk about some of the two kind of more recent emerging research findings that are talking about leadership roles to support implementation. And I'm going to talk about leadership with a lowercase L and an uppercase L. Full disclosure, my jam is leadership. I have my master's degree in educational leadership. I have my PhD in educational leadership. And I can tell you, administrators, I hope you will support me in my statement I'm about to make. They don't teach you how to support implementation in college. Like when we go to learn how to be principals and superintendents, no one teaches you how to support implementation. We don't learn a lot when it comes to implementation. We don't even learn a lot about how to deal with people's lack of readiness to change. Nowadays, we talk about adaptive challenges, technical problems. People say, have you read Heifetz's adaptive challenges? I never read that when I went through my leadership programs. Are there any other administrators who can support me in that? Maybe you went to better programs than me. Okay. So, but there is newer research that has emerged, and I really wanted to lift it into this conversation because I think it's time that we elevate the conversation and talk about leadership with a capital L and a lowercase L. And we talk about participatory leadership, and we enter coaches into the conversation as helping administrators lead implementation. So I'm going to talk about what that means in just a minute. And my fellow administrators in the room, we learned a lot about transformational leadership. We learned a lot about transactional leadership. We, of course, learned how to be an instructional leader. And these were all things that were lofty and really way up here. But we did not necessarily learn how to really share and distribute leadership in ways that we could help to create a climate that set the stage for voices to be heard, perspectives to be heard, and to create real meaningful roles for people like coaches to truly support staff and to deal with some people's lack of readiness to change. And so I want to talk about those leadership roles that have emerged. We're going to also talk about the leadership attributes. And again, I'm not talking about administrator at that point. Yes, administrators need these attributes, but coaches need these leadership attributes. Anyone who's leading implementation with a lowercase L, that's helping to participate and lead a defined effort, lead strategies in an MTSS framework to be implemented, they have to have these attributes to help ensure that they can be implemented across the school so that any student who needs to benefit from them can do so, so that any teacher who needs to use these things can do so. And then we're going to talk about the climate that coaches can help create to set the stage so that people can implement things. And we're going to talk about some helpful things that coaches can do if people are not quite ready to make a change. So some of the information that I've pulled from is found within chapter 7 from the book that Dr. Jennifer Pierce and I had the gift of writing, which is Coaching for Systems and Teachers Change. And so it's primarily focused around readiness for change. It's the end of the year. This is the time of year when people kind of take a breath and say, okay, like, how did the year go? Which I'm going to have you think about. And you start to think about what you're going to do next. So I'm going to get you into a reflectful moment in just a second to think about this year and thinking about next year. Okay, so here are some assumptions. Well, before we get into the assumptions, let me have you reflect. So what has been the most significant adolescent literacy effort that you were leading staff to implement this year? So if you had to think through what's the most significant thing that you feel you helped staff implement, and then what were the most significant challenges that you faced? So turn and talk with your elbow partner. Well, you can join. Don't want you to be by yourself. Can you have a partner too that can join you? Okay, guys, let's come on back together. Okay. So I heard lots of great things as we were walking around. I heard about online schooling, so like cyber academies. That is a challenge. I had the gift of supporting an online academy in Ohio, which did have a lot of challenges. You had the whole issue of online schooling, kids who were 100, in this case, this is the context in Ohio, 100% online. So they were not doing any intervention face-to-face. And you had very novice teachers who were using Canvas, so they were designing intervention, were not necessarily taught how to design intervention. And so there was a lot of challenges just with online learning. And then you couple intervention, design and delivery. I also heard things like even just entering into the adolescent literacy space, different than K-3. So what are there two other challenges that people wanted to share, that people are willing to share? Oh, yes. Okay, I'm going to come back so everyone can hear.
I am the dyslexia practitioner. I'm Morton Gillingham trained for our entire district. Yep. So I work with the kids one-on-one, and I usually have all of the legal cases. And we spent a lot of time getting like 10 teachers Morton Gillingham trained. And the response is, I don't want to be you. Because I do travel. It's very stressful with the legal cases, but there's no buy-in. Like nobody wants to take on that challenge of teaching those kids to read. And I think that's just some of the issues that we have. And even with the adolescents, like just getting them to read what they're interested in, nobody wants that buy-in.
Yeah, well, and the older the kids are, you have to remember, the older the kids are, the less motivated many of them are, because for some of them, they've been struggling to learn to read since first grade. So can you imagine if you have like a 10th grader that has been struggling to learn to read since first grade? You've had them, yes. And so to think about going into reading intervention is probably the last thing some of these students want, which leads into Dr. Vaughn's research around reading intervention and anxiety. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Do we have one more challenge that someone's willing to share? Yes. See, now if you run around, you get warmer.
That's what it is.
Yes, this is what it is.
All right. So a couple ideas that come up for me. I think one is like the idea that in literacy practices, there's like a politically neutral. So we feel like we go with like this system of like repetition of what we've always done, and we get caught up in those patterns instead of maybe thinking, I think towards literacy, not just as like reading the word and making sure we comprehend what we read, but reading the world. So like, what does this mean for us really? Like when we walk back out through that door, because we've read this text, how does it speak to our mind, our heart, and how does it lead us to these like transformed spaces? And I think we can get so caught up in almost like what I would call like the act of doing school, that sometimes we can miss like the process of reading and growing as human beings in that process too.
Yeah, actually, like how does that transform us internally? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And if you want to, if you're cold, you can be the runner.
You know what? You're
feeling good. Okay. Good. Okay. So here are some coaching assumptions that I just wanted to make. So coaching is being encouraged and used at an increasing rate. I mean, there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of money that is being allocated across states. There's being a lot of money that's even being allocated at a federal level to learn more about coaching. Research has supported the value of coaching, both to improve the initial adoption of specific practices. There are some unknown questions, though. There are unknown questions about how to select, train, and support coaches. How do you do this in realistic, practical, and doable ways? And so the U.S. Department of Education actually has actually invested in learning more about coaching. They've actually allocated federal money for coaching model demonstration grants. And a model demonstration grant is specific funds for something that has a lot of evidence. So coaching, a lot of evidence to show that it's effective. But a model demonstration grant is the U.S. Department of Education's way to say, we know it's effective. However, we're not convinced that it can be done in a realistic, practical, and doable way in a variety of contexts. And when I say a variety of context, so Pennsylvania, like Michigan, you have large districts, right? You also have smaller school districts. In Michigan, we have the Upper Peninsula, we have Detroit, we have Grand Rapids. So when you think about coaching, coaching looks very different in the Upper Peninsula when it's a one-room schoolhouse versus when it's a large urban district. So there's a lot of value to coaching, but there's still a lot of unknown questions that need to be answered. And so the U.S. Department of Ed has even invested funds to try to get some answers to those questions. There's also two categories of coaching. There's systems coaching and there's instructional coaching. Systems coaching is commonly referred to as coaching of teams. So if you think of a system is a structure in a structure within a school or a district, and a team is typically a structure to help support implementation. And so a school leadership team, a building leadership team, that would be a system that helps support the implementation. A principal is usually a part of that team. So a systems coach is a coach for that team. An instructional coach is coaching an individual teacher to implement a particular practice. So if you had to pick which one would take more man or woman power to be able to implement, which one do you think it would take? Systems coach or instructional coach? Would it be easier to coach teams, whole teams, or would it be more complicated to coach individual teachers? Think about, what do you think it would be? Easier or more difficult to do? Turn and talk to your partner. What would it be harder to do? What do you think? Oh, that's a really unique way of looking at it. So if you have teams, you would need more buy-in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you thinking of something?
I was thinking of that. I was thinking,
Yep. Yep. Yep, that's good. Okay. So I have heard some great responses. So I've heard people think about it from a couple of ways. I've heard people talk about it in terms of capacity. So if you are an N of 1, if you are the only instructional coach and you have 50 teachers in the middle school, you have 90. Okay, so raise your hand. What's your first name?
Angela.
So Angela has 90 teachers. And if all 90 teachers are learning text structure, and Angela has to figure out how to coach 90 all at once, might that perhaps promote gray hair? Could that promote gray hair? Yes or no? It could. It absolutely could. So there are some, so you could make a case that there could be more complexity for instructional coaching. On the other hand, I heard the, partners back here say, well, if you've got a whole team and you've got multiple people on a team, different dynamics, different perspectives. So you've got the whole team dynamic in and of itself, which could create some adaptive challenges, some complexities that could be a challenge for a coach to address. Equally as plausible of an explanation. From in a lot of the spaces and places that I have the gift of being in, a lot of people struggle to keep up with the demand of instructional coaching for the Angela situation. Because a lot of people, right, wrong, or indifferent, plan the professional learning all at once. It's all the teachers are going to get training at the same time. It's kind of the non-example of what Dr. Vaughn said this morning. Do you remember Dr. Vaughn said, don't train everyone and everything at the same time. A lot of times they use the back to school PD day. Everyone gets training and everything at the same time and say, okay, Angela, coach of one, coach everyone, ready, set, go. And then what happens is you've got Angela who's trying to figure out how to schedule everyone. And it ends up becoming just an unmanageable task. And then you end up having teachers that are like, what the heck? Why am I being held accountable to doing something that I just don't feel confident in being able to do? There it snowballs. There's the frustration, and there comes the challenges, which sometimes get taken out on Angela as the instructional coach, not because they intended it, but she's just the person that's kind of taken the burden because people are frustrated. And that's kind of how it snowballs from there. So in a secondary literacy model, the goal is to have kids learning the information that they are, their classes, what they're learning in middle school and high school. The goal is to have them doing well in school, and we want them reading more. The goal is not to just teach a bunch of comprehension strategies for the sake of teaching comprehension. The goal is to get them to learn the contents of their middle school and high school classes. So this morning, I talked about text structure, and I talked about that. There are things, if we want to maximize what they're learning in their classes, there are things teachers can do before kids read, while they read, and after they've read. So if I'm an instructional coach, all the Angelas of the world, you can think of each of these sub bullets under each or within each of these columns. They are their own specific strategy. So you've got 3 on the left. You have 4 things in the middle. So that's 7. And you have 2 things at the end. That's 9. So that's 9 things that instructional coaches would be coaching. Now think about teacher. Okay, so if I'm a social studies teacher, I mean, what do we think our core subject area teachers learned in college? Like if I'm a history major and I went to school to learn how to be a history teacher, what were the things I learned? What were my classes about in college? History. Do we think I learned probably about any of these things? No. And we've actually asked history teachers and ELA teachers and science teachers and math teachers. They're like, we didn't learn any of this. So you've got teachers who are being asked to teach in ways that they never learned. And then you've got kids who are not reading as much as we would want them to read. They're not learning as much as we would hope. And for those of you who were with me this morning, I had shared with you the story that we have we do have a crisis. We have fewer kids who are doing well in, if we look at NAEP data, Pennsylvania's got some issues with NAEP data. Michigan's got issues with NAEP data. We've actually gone down 7 states, 7 spots in our NAEP data. Eighth grade reading. So we've got some issues. And if we don't have more kids reading, more opportunities for them to read, they're not going to read. And complicating matters is that kids nowadays, the academic vocabulary is in the textbooks that they're going to read. I fessed up this morning and said, I dated myself. I'm not an Oprah book club person. So I don't read for pleasure reading. I mean, I read coaching books for fun. And that's what I read, dyslexia books for fun. And I shared my story about my son, Logan, who loves history, but he's watched my husband. He doesn't know Mark reads books in the library on history, which Mark does, but he's watched Mark watch YouTube videos on history. And Logan does as well. YouTube, like the people who narrate, aren't using academic language that you read in the history books. So the academic vocabulary is in the textbooks. So we are stifling kids' academic language if we're not giving them access to the academic text in the classrooms. So these are the strategies that can be used to allow the teachers to give kids access to and more meaning in the text. So if you're a teacher and you're learning about text structure and the coach is going to teach these 7 things, then I had talked this morning about these first 3 steps. The first 3 steps were what had to do with building conceptual knowledge of text structure, use icons and pictures to do it. Use a student-friendly definition of what the text structure is, and discriminate, teach kids to discriminate. And then at the very end, to bring us full circle, after they've read and after they're practicing, you can use writing to help them understand what they've read. So I'm going to give you just a quick example. So here's student-friendly text. You can see the icons. So icon of a simple description, simple definition of what it means. That's a text structure. Another text structure is sequence, simple icon, simple definition. Here's an icon for cause and effect, simple definition. And then teachers are learning to teach students how to discriminate. Okay, so this is in front of students. They have this passage and they have to identify the text structure of the passage. Now, this is a during reading strategy. And so this is what they're reading, and they have to pick which text structure makes sense here. What's the text structure that the author used? So turn and talk with your partner. Which text structure is used for this passage? Which text structure is used? What do you guys think? What's the text structure that's used? What do you guys think? Yeah. So what were they? Yeah. Okay. So I heard a lot of people say, so which one was it? Simple description or compare and contrast? What was the text structure? Which one, everyone? Compare and contrast. Now, so this is, again, teaching kids text structure helps them to better comprehend what it is that they're reading. So here's a gist statement. After they've read, here's an example of them writing a summary. And now remember, Sharon said this morning, Don't get hung up on the number of words. But this is what a student writes. Although tornadoes and hurricanes are large, damaging storms with high winds, how they develop and their sizes are different. Hurricanes form over oceans and are larger storms, while tornadoes form over land and are smaller storms. Now, this would be after they've read, they are now writing about it, and writing about what you read gives retrieval practice and helps kids understand what they've read, okay? So we've got Angela, instructional coach, has teachers learning about text structure, and she's now tasked to provide coaching to teachers in using text structure. Okay, now she's also the teachers are also learning that there are signal words that teachers can teach kids to use to help more easily identify the type of structure that an author is using in text. And again, this is ways in which they're making it easy for kids to not get caught up in the minutia of text structure, but easy ways for kids to quickly identify the structure that the text structure that the author is using. So this is an example. And again, they give kids, a passage to practice, and they want kids using those kind of keywords that were in the previous slide to identify the author's text structure, okay? So implementation, the strategy would be text structure, okay? That's what we're implementing. So as a leader, there are two key roles that are working to help implement this particular strategy that have emerged in the literature. And the first one is called an executive sponsor. Okay, so an executive sponsor, this person, it has formal authority, okay, formal authority and decision-making power, okay? And are they internal or external to the organization? Which one? Internal, okay? And they can also be champion. And so this is important because where are my principles here? Where are my principles? Okay, so principles, you fall into this key leadership role. You are the people that have the decision-making power. You are the people that are internal to the organization. You are the people that have the decision-making authority. You are internal to the organization. And you're not typically embedded in the same type of nuances that the Angelas, the coaches are in, but you are critical to setting the stage for implementation. The Angelas, the coaches, are definitely champions, okay? So they don't necessarily have formal decision-making authority, like they aren't the decision makers in the building, but they should have an intrinsic motivation to see these strategies implemented. They are driven to succeed, and coaches should be the most positive people who want to see implementation take hold. Is it possible in your careers that you've ever seen a coach that maybe has not been the most positive approaching person? Yeah, I have too. I mean, I have seen some people where I've walked into a staff meeting, I've seen the coach approach the staff, and I have seen people turn off their ears. I've never thought that was possible, but I've seen it. I've seen the eyes, I've seen the body language, and I've seen them not approach the work in a very positive way. So champions and executive sponsors are the two leadership roles that have emerged that are critical to supporting implementation. Coaches are champions. Principals are executive sponsors who do also play a role in helping to be a champion, but they're not the Angelas. They're not the people who are the coaches, because the principals are the evaluators. They really are. They do the teacher evaluation. And I am a big advocate that you don't want a coach in a position where he or she is made to feel like it's a direct pipeline to the teacher's evaluation, that they're sharing information with the administrator to feed the teacher's evaluation. You want it to be a safe space for teachers to be vulnerable and to be able to safely say what's going well and what their needs are. So if we look at the types of things that champions are doing, they are advocating for implementation. So if you keep the text structure example, they're advocating for text structure to be implemented. They're advocating for activities around text structure to happen. They're building relationships with staff. They are also persuading others that this strategy is really good to be implemented. Okay. Now, I'd like you to turn and talk with your partner. Why do you think they might have to persuade other people to use these types of strategies? Why might they persuade others to use these strategies? Okay, turn and talk with your partner. Why might they have to persuade others to use text structure and other types of literacy strategies?
Are you asking? See these strategies, or are you asking why the coach would teach it?
So
I'm that student.
you don't want to do it.
Right. the
And
teacher
why do I have to persuade you? Text
That's what I
structure is
thought.
so good to do.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's right.
Why would
Right.
I have to do
It's
that?
structural for the teacher, and or they think it's a reflection of them, they're like bad teacher.
Yeah, or it's like someone said this morning, they're like, it's my job to teach my content. I don't have to
Right.
teach
Oh,
them.
oh,
I'm not gonna teach them how to read. You're asking me to teach them how to read.
That's your job. Yeah.
That's your- yes.
100%.
Yes, sorry about that. That was my fault. What's the give and take?
So we're talking about why it's difficult.
Yeah.
The merit of them. It isn't give and take. I feel like good coaching is a reciprocity.
Yeah.
Feel safe. Then you only trust in that process, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that's when you can convince them that these practices.
Yep.
And, yeah, at least have them try it out. Oftentimes if they don't see the value.
I know, I have people this morning that said, they were honest and said, some people think you're asking me to teach kids how to read. That's not my job. Well, I mean, but I think that has to do with how we framed it. I mean, I think it's their job to teach their core subject area. I think these strategies allow kids to understand the content that they are teaching. So I think that sometimes it's the way in which we're framing the why. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Okay, guys. All right. So as I was walking around, there were a lot of reasons why we have to persuade people to use these types of strategies. So this morning, I heard things like really honest conversations. I heard things like, it's not now this was a person who was sharing the types of things that they heard. They were not sharing their own personal opinions. So I wanted to say that. Things like, I'm the science teacher. I'm not a reading teacher. It's my job to teach kids science, not teach reading. That's fair. And I really think that speaks to the way we've packaged this. I think that we're leading too much with that this is about teaching kids to read. I lead with this is about teaching kids your subject area. This is about helping them understand what you're teaching. And bonus, they're reading text, which is going to help them read and increase their language and vocabulary. So this is like win-win-win. I mean, for those of you who like The Office, Scranton, Pennsylvania, The Office. I mean, like it's the win, win, win. We all win, right? So, but you know, and you have teachers that are constantly in a situation where they're implementing new things. It's true. I mean, think of the new things, the number of new things that teachers are being asked to implement. And every year they're being asked, do this, now do this, now do this. And very rarely are things taken off the plate, right? And so a lot of it's fatigue, I think. And so when you have to persuade others of the merits of using text summarization or any of these before, during, or after strategies, some of it is persuading them about why is this going to be important for helping kids understand the content that you're teaching? Why is this going to be different than previous implementation efforts that you've been asked to do? So that's a hard job as a coach. And I don't think we do as a field. I don't think we support coaches enough to help them with bullet number 3. I think we expect coaches to be prepared to walk in and persuade other people to want to do this. I don't think we give them strategies for working with people who aren't quite ready. And I don't think that we own the fact that some of the reasons why they're not quite ready have a lot to do with the initiative fatigue and the situations that they have nothing to do with, that were created by the district itself. They also are responsible for planning and facilitating team meetings. So if a coach is meeting with teachers, they have to plan and have those meetings. They're creating a reflective and safe learning and collaborative environment, because if people aren't ready to make a change, we have to create safe spaces for them to say why they're not ready to make the change. I mean, this isn't about just having a bunch of people who are here to say, yes, I'm going to do it. And I think the biggest mistake we make is that a lot of people who are dealing with folks who aren't ready to make a change say, build a relationship. You guys heard that before? Build a relationship. But oftentimes what that means is have positive conversations, develop friendships. But what it also means is create safe spaces for people to feel comfortable saying, what is it about it that you don't feel comfortable with? And make it safe for them to really be honest. And that's okay. And they should be able to be honest. We should allow a safe space to be honest and to not have it be punitive. And that does get into the culture and whether or not the culture that our administrators have, and I don't mean that from just a building perspective, but district, is the culture such that it's not punitive and that people can speak up and talk about why they are feeling the way that they're feeling. And you guys, I think there's countless stories that we could share that talk about why people maybe aren't feeling ready or are reluctant to make a change. They also are going to support implementation at the ground level. My other pet peeve is I've had a lot of coaches who are reluctant themselves to actually try to implement. Nothing annoys me more than a coach who doesn't actually know how to use a strategy themselves. And I know some people are like, well, that sounds absurd, Kim. Like, does this really exist? I've seen it. I have seen coaches who actually have never done some of these strategies. And I don't think that we would expect a coach to know everything, but then let's make ourselves equally as vulnerable. And I'm a big believer in learning a strategy. Like, I didn't know text structure. I had to learn this. And so I went through the training and I asked a teacher, like, true story. I said, hey, I have not done this before. Like, can we learn this together? Can we plan together? And would you let me try it with your students? And I went one step farther. Would you give me feedback? And here's kind of the checklist for what fidelity looks like. would you give me feedback on this checklist? So I went one step farther because I believed that I can't, I didn't know how to do it. And I actually did this, full disclosure, I actually just did this too with classroom tier 1 behavior supports. So I have pushed all of my staff to go back and get current implementation experience, because I believe that the kids of 2024 are not the same from the kids of 2002, which is the last year that I taught a class. And a lot of people have said these kids post-pandemic are not the same. Now, so many people are saying that I believe in like the frequency in which they're saying that. They're like, I think that's worthy of listening and truly investigating. So I was doing a staff orientation, and we are doing a training. We're working with a whole district, and we're doing tier 1 classroom social emotional behavior supports. So I said to the staff, I said, okay, I have not had a class since 2002. I said, and I am going to look like, I would love to come in and practice. I said, I don't want any of you guys to give me an answer now, but if just think about it, if you're willing to let me come in and try positive greetings at the door. We have a whole sequence, positive greetings at the door. There's like classroom expectations. There's self-regulation strategies and de-escalation strategies, the whole thing. And you should see the looks on their face. And the coaches came up to me after and they said, did she just say that she wants to come into the class and try these things? And they said, yeah, she really did. I had a whole bunch of people that said, you can come in my class. And I said, well, thank you. They said, why are you doing that? I said, well, I haven't had a class since 2002. And they're like, you really want to do this? I said, yeah. I said, and I can tell you what, it's not going to go well. I haven't done this since 2002. That's what I said. I full disclosure. I said, it's not going to go well. I'm rusty. I'm 47. I said, it's not going to go well, but that's okay. We're going to do this together. But that's an example of being vulnerable. And it's like, we're in this together. And then the principal who watched me do it, I'm like, and I said, and you're going to see in a minute where I set the principal up. I'm like, principal, you're going to come in too. We're going to all do this together. We're going to all be equally as vulnerable and create a culture where we're going to do this together. And everyone's like, this is amazing. Like, we've never had this happen before. Now, I'm not saying that to set up the administrators, but I truly believe that we expect teachers all the time to try new things. And we put coaches in a spot to be like the experts, when even coaches might only be a couple steps ahead of the teachers. So why not allow the coaches to be equally as vulnerable and learn too? And then why not have the principals be equally as vulnerable? And that's how you create a climate where we truly are learners. So this is how, whoops, I went to the wrong one. So this is how we're going to support implementation at the ground level. Coaches are at the ground level with the teachers. We're going to look at data and we're going to facilitate conversation in the team meetings and say, okay, which perspectives are here? Who are we missing? So here are the attributes that coaches need, that principals need. Lowercase L for leadership, uppercase L for leadership. We need influence, presence, mental presence, physical presence, ownership. We need persistence, participatory leadership, and persuasiveness. These are the 6 leadership attributes. And that's administrators, so leadership with an uppercase L, coaches, leadership with a lowercase L. And in terms of what those mean, influence, this is where my leaders with an uppercase L, you have formal authority. So that's administrators, formal authority. But coaches have informal authority. Teachers they know who knows. They know if a coach doesn't know what they're talking about. They know, just like my secondary teachers out there, I always say that this, are you a secondary teacher? Where are my secondary teachers? Okay. I always say secondary teachers can sniff out a trainer in a second because they know if they actually have secondary experience in a second. Is that true? You can, you so can, you so can. So you have to have, there's formal authority, there's informal authority, meaning you're respected, you're trusted by your colleagues, you have a reputation for being knowledgeable, and you also have you have institutional savvy and ownership. That's the other one. You have personal responsibility for implementation. You own this. So like coaches, I'm going to own this. Like, I believe this is going to happen. I have full belief that I can help see these strategies be implemented. Same thing for principals. If you're leading implementation, you have to believe it. You own it. Presence, you're there physically, mentally. Persistence, this is like grit, tenacity. You won't give up. And the reason why we say persistence is because when you have people that aren't quite ready, and some would say they're resistant, I don't say that. I think there's no such thing as resistance. It's really just a lack of preparation, at least for a while. I mean, some people say, Kim, do you truly believe that? Because I've had people that have worked for years on, and some people just don't want to change. And I do think there comes a point when you have to change, but I do believe we don't do a good job helping people. And so, so I've seen coaches and principals beat up. So you have to have persistence and persuasiveness. You have to you have to persuade people of the merits of the evidence-based practice and participatory leadership. You have to find additional people to help with the messaging and help get people involved. So leadership, so you have champions, executive sponsors. So lowercase L and uppercase L should communicate and collaborate with each other. That doesn't mean tattletaling. That doesn't mean feeding information to principals, but you guys really are supporting each other. And principals, you should be helping the coaches to make sure that the resources are there and support is there for teachers to be able to implement these strategies that they need to help improve the strategies so kids can learn the core subjects that the teachers are teaching. Okay, so the final thing that I want to talk about is the leaders. If you want to create a strong climate for implementation, these are the 6 things that you have to do. Okay, now look at these 6 things, okay? Now coaches, so lowercase L's, there's something where you say, that's me. That's me. Which one of those numbers do you say, that's me? Turn and talk to your partner. Which number do you say, that's me as a coach? Which number speaks to you? Say, that's me. That's what I do as a coach. That number's me. Which one? Turn and talk to your partner. Which number? Yep, gotta pick one. Which one? One. Well, what is your one? So what? So 4. Yeah, yeah. Because you think if you're a coach, there's role model, change, right? So I get anything that the coach is going to do, it's going to be 4. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. What did you guys say? 4. 4. Yeah, 1 and 4. Yep.
Yeah, I'm 1 and 4.
1 and 4. Yeah, yeah, because coaches would also want to.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
yep.
And I don't do principal anymore. I'm the director of curriculum instruction.
Okay. Okay, guys. Yep. All right. So as I was walking around, I actually heard 2 numbers. So the one that I heard the most, who wants to, I heard some people that were saying it. Which number? Go ahead and say it. 4. Yeah, 4. I also heard another number. It's something that coaches typically use with teachers often. I heard another number talked about. They're using something. They're helping teachers look at something. Oh, say it. Data. So which one was that? Which number was that? Wait, say it. You just said it.
Number 1.
Number 1. Yeah, I heard 4 most often, and I also heard 1. But then so now administrators, there's definitely one of these numbers where coaches say, not me. I don't do this. I don't do these things. Not me. Oh, someone's already saying it. I can hear it. 6. Yeah, not me. And yeah, so administrators, how leaders recruit, select, and promote staff, that is squarely in the domain of leaders with a capital L. And then I also hear a lot of people say one other number for administrators, where coaches say, not really me, not me. I rely on my administrators to do this to create a climate conducive for implementation. I lean on them. What did you say? Say it. Yeah. 3. They allocating resources because they say the administrators have the budget. They're the ones that have the budget. But these are the 6 things that leaders do to create a climate conducive for implementation. They pay attention to and measure data. They react to obstacles and crises. They allocate resources. They are modeling coaching. They recognize and appreciate efforts of staff, and the leaders are recruiting, selecting, and promoting staff. So we have 2 key roles for leading implementation, and we have leaders with a capital L and then a lowercase L. Coaches are which one? Capital or lowercase L? Which one? Lower. Yep. And coaches are going to create a climate conducive for implementation, right? And the coaches squarely are in number 4, but they also should be helping people look at data. So bottom line is that there are things that we can do, leaders and coaches, to support teachers in implementing evidence-based practices to improve reading outcomes for students. Okay, so with that said, you have final comments,
with that said,
right?
let's give Dr. St. Martin a big round of applause. Thank you so much. For those of us who are coaches, we really appreciated all of this today. Thank you so much.